That fancy sea salt you just sprinkled on your dinner, scientists found it contains up to 1,674 tiny pieces of plastic per kilogram, and you are eating it every single day. A landmark study published in Environmental Science and Technology tested 39 salt brands from 21 countries, and the results were disturbing. Over 90% of them contained microplastics. That means 9 out of every 10 salt brands sitting on grocery store shelves right now are contaminated with invisible plastic particles that you cannot see, cannot taste, and cannot smell. But here is the thing. Not all brands are equally guilty. Some are practically swimming in plastic, while a handful have figured out how to keep their salt clean. So, which ones should you throw in the trash and which ones actually deserve a spot in your kitchen? Let's start with one of the most popular sea salts in America. La Baleine has been harvested from the Mediterranean Sea since 1856. You have probably seen that little blue whale logo on grocery store shelves at Whole Foods, Target, and at just about every specialty food store in the country. It looks premium, and it feels premium, and even the name sounds fancy. Well, here is what that French sophistication does not tell you. The Mediterranean Sea is one of the most plastic-polluted bodies of water on the planet. It is a semi-enclosed sea surrounded by 22 countries, with rivers dumping an estimated 229,000 tons of plastic into it every single year. And La Baleine harvests their salt by evaporating this exact water. Think about that for a second. When you evaporate seawater to make salt, the water leaves, but everything else stays behind. The minerals stay, the flavor compounds stay, and yes, the microplastics stay too. A 2023 study in the journal Ecotoxicology and Environmental Safety confirmed that European sea salts carry measurable microplastic contamination. Here's the kicker: a significant portion of that plastic gets introduced during production itself, not just from the source water. So you are getting hit twice: Mediterranean pollution and manufacturing contamination. At around $6 for a 26-ounce container, you are paying a premium for plastic seasoned salt wrapped in a pretty package. Your wallet feels the sting, but your body absorbs the plastic. Makes sense, right? But Mediterranean salt is not the only offender hiding behind a health halo. Celtic sea salt has become the darling of the wellness community. Every health influencer and their mother swears by it. People claim it has 82 trace minerals. They say it is hand-harvested in France. They call it the gold standard of salt. Well, here is what those influencer posts conveniently leave out. Independent lab testing by ABNRF found that Celtic sea salt contains approximately 2.3 micrograms of lead per teaspoon. That is enough to exceed the FDA daily safe limit for children if consumed regularly. But the microplastic situation is what really makes this interesting. Celtic sea salt is harvested from tidal pools along the coast of Brittany, France, using traditional methods. Sounds romantic until you realize that traditional methods means open-air, clay-lined ponds where seawater sits exposed to the environment for extended periods. Every piece of windblown plastic, every particle floating in that coastal water, every microfiber drifting through the air has a chance to land right in your salt. And because the salt is minimally processed, which is exactly what they market as a benefit, there is no filtration step to remove those contaminants. You are essentially paying $10 or more per pound for unfiltered ocean water residue and calling it a health food. The cruel irony is that people switch to Celtic sea salt specifically because they think it is cleaner than regular table salt. Instead, they are trading one problem for a combination of microplastics and measurable heavy metals. It is like leaving a fast food restaurant and walking into a different fast food restaurant thinking you just made a healthy choice. Speaking of health food marketing gone wrong, let's talk about Himalayan pink salt. Yes, I know it is technically not a sea salt, but it is sold right next to sea salts, marketed the same way, and millions of Americans use it as their primary sea salt alternative. so it deserves a spot on this list. Here is the thing most people do not know. A 2022 study published in Environmental Science and Pollution Research tested 7 common Australian commercial salts, and the results were shocking. Himalayan pink salt actually had some of the highest microplastic contamination of all the salts tested, even higher than sea salt in some cases. Wait, what? How does a salt mined from ancient deposits hundreds of feet underground end up loaded with modern plastic? The answer is manufacturing and packaging. Those ancient salt deposits might be millions of years old, but the machinery that mines them, the conveyor belts that transport them, the processing facilities that grind them, and the plastic bags that store them are all very modern. Microplastic contamination does not just come from the ocean, folks. It comes from every point in the supply chain where plastic touches your food. And the generic Himalayan pink salt brands you grab at the grocery store for $4 to $7 are not exactly investing in contamination prevention. They are investing in that pretty pink color and the word Himalayan because those two things sell more salt than actual purity testing ever could. Now, let's talk about a brand that's in virtually every American kitchen. Morton has been the salt king of America since 1848. That girl with the umbrella is practically a national icon. But Morton's sea salt line, specifically the coarse sea salt, sits in a complicated spot. What we do know from independent testing is that Morton's iodized table salt actually tested clean for both microplastics and heavy metals in the ABNRF study. But here's where it gets tricky. That's their refined, heavily processed table salt. Their sea salt products are a different story. Sea salt, by definition, undergoes less processing, which means less opportunity to filter out contaminants. And Morton's sea salt, while affordable at around $3 to $4 a container, does not come with the same transparency about contamination levels that you would want from something you consume daily. The brand relies on its century-old reputation, and most consumers assume that if Morton makes it, it must be safe. But reputation and lab results do not always shake hands. Here is a brand that will surprise many budget-conscious shoppers. The 365 by Whole Foods Market sea salt positions itself as the affordable organic option in the fancy grocery store. You are shopping at Whole Foods, so everything must be premium quality, right? Well, not exactly. Store brand sea salts, even from upscale retailers, face the same fundamental problem as every other sea salt. They are harvested from oceans contaminated with 14 million tons of microplastic. And the organic label on salt is essentially meaningless when it comes to microplastics because there is no organic certification standard that addresses plastic contamination. Salt is a mineral. It cannot be organic in the traditional agricultural sense. So when you see organic sea salt and pay a slight premium, you are paying for marketing language that has zero bearing on whether your salt contains plastic particles. The 365 brand does not publicly share detailed microplastic testing results, and independent testing of store brand sea salts consistently shows contamination in line with the broader 90% statistic. You are paying Whole Foods prices for the same contaminated ocean water that budget brands are selling. McCormick Sea Salt Grinder might be the sneakiest offender on this list. It sits on the spice rack in virtually every grocery store in America, looking innocent with that little built-in grinder. Convenient, right? Fresh ground sea salt at the twist of your wrist. But here is what that convenient packaging does not tell you. McCormick sources sea salt from multiple global suppliers, and global sourcing means you have no idea which ocean your salt came from. Was it from relatively cleaner North Atlantic waters? Or from the heavily polluted waters off Southeast Asia, where studies found microplastic counts as high as 13,629 particles per kilogram? You are playing geographic roulette with every grind, and that plastic grinder mechanism on top? Every time you twist it, there is friction between plastic components grinding directly above your food. Researchers have noted that a notable fraction of microplastics in processed salts gets introduced during manufacturing and packaging. So you have potentially contaminated sea salt being ground through a plastic mechanism. It is like filtering dirty water through a dirty filter. Rounding out our list is Trader Joe's sea salt. Trader Joe's has built a cult following by offering quality products at reasonable prices, and their sea salt is no exception in terms of popularity. But popularity does not equal purity. Trader Joe's, like most retailers, does not manufacture its own salt. They source it from various producers and put their label on it. The company has not publicly released comprehensive microplastic testing data for their sea salt products. When you look at the broader research, the picture is not reassuring. A massive global review published in Scientific Reports found that 94% of all salt products tested worldwide contained microplastics, with the three most common types being polyethylene terephthalate, polypropylene, and polyethylene. Those are the same plastics found in water bottles, food containers, and packaging materials. At $2 to $3 for a standard container, Trader Joe's sea salt is affordable. But the question is not what you are paying in dollars. It is what you are paying in accumulated plastic particles over years and decades of daily consumption. Researchers estimate the average adult ingests approximately 2,000 microplastic particles per year through salt alone. That is 2,000 tiny pieces of plastic hitching a ride on your dinner every single year. Makes you think twice about that casual sprinkle, doesn't it? Now here's where things actually get hopeful. Because while 90% of salt brands failed the microplastic test, a few brands have figured out how to deliver genuinely clean salt. And the first one might surprise you with where it comes from. Jacobsen Salt Company operates out of Net Arts Bay, Oregon, and these folks take purity seriously. Unlike massive commercial operations sourcing salt from polluted global waters, Jacobsen harvests from a small, carefully monitored bay on the Oregon coast. But what really sets them apart is the testing. Independent lab analysis by ABNRF found 0 detectable heavy metals in Jacobsen sea salt. 0 lead, 0 arsenic, 0 aluminum. And while trace microplastics were detected at approximately 0.17 particles per teaspoon, that is an extraordinarily low level, far below what researchers consider a meaningful contribution to your overall microplastic exposure. For context, you would get more microplastics from a single cup of tea brewed in a plastic tea bag than from an entire container of Jacobsen salt. The company uses traditional harvesting methods combined with modern quality control, which is the combination that actually works. Tradition without quality control gives you Celtic sea salt. Quality control without tradition gives you Morton's processed table salt. Jacobsen figured out how to do both. At around $10 to $15 for a jar, it is not cheap. But when you are talking about something you put on every meal every single day, the math works out to pennies per serving for salt that has actually been tested and verified. That is not a luxury purchase. That is a rational one. The second clean option takes a completely different approach to the purity problem. Redmond Real Salt comes from an ancient seabed in Redmond, Utah, that has been buried underground and protected from environmental contamination for approximately 200 million years. Read that number again, 200 million years. That means this salt was deposited long before humans existed, long before plastic was invented, and long before industrial pollution became a thing. The salt sits beneath layers of volcanic ash that act as a natural protective barrier, sealing it off from modern contaminants. Because it is mined from deep underground rather than harvested from today's oceans, it bypasses the fundamental problem that plagues every sea salt on the market. You cannot contaminate salt with ocean plastic if the salt never touches the ocean. Testing by ABNRF found no detectable microplastics in Redmond Real Salt. It does contain trace minerals that give it a distinctive pinkish color and a slightly different flavor profile than standard sea salt. At about $8 to $12, depending on the size, Redmond Real Salt occupies that sweet spot between affordable and premium. You are not paying gourmet prices, but you are getting genuinely ancient protected salt that modern pollution simply cannot reach. For families who go through salt regularly, especially those with young children who are more vulnerable to contaminant exposure, this might be the smartest switch you can make. And the third clean option has been quietly delivering quality from the English coast since 1882. Maldon sea salt flakes are harvested from the Blackwater estuary in Essex, England, using a careful evaporation process refined over 4 generations. What makes Maldon different? 2 things. First, their source waters are significantly cleaner than the Mediterranean, Asian, or heavily trafficked Atlantic shipping lanes where many commercial sea salts originate. Second, and more importantly, their production process involves careful monitoring and quality control at every stage. Independent lab testing by ABNRF confirmed 0 detectable heavy metals in Maldon sea salt, and microplastic levels were extremely low, approximately 0.4 particles per teaspoon. That is a negligible amount, and researchers have noted that these trace levels are far less concerning than the bioaccumulative heavy metals found in brands like Celtic sea salt. Those distinctive pyramid-shaped flakes are not just a gimmick either. The crystallization process that creates them involves slow, controlled evaporation that inherently produces a cleaner end product. At around $7 to $9 for a box, Maldon is the most accessible of our 3 clean options. You can find it at most grocery stores from coast to coast, which means switching to a cleaner salt does not require hunting down specialty products or paying shipping costs. So here's the bottom line. The average American consumes 3,400 milligrams of salt per day. That is salt on your eggs, salt in your soup, salt on your steak every single day for your entire life. Over 50 years, that adds up to roughly 100,000 teaspoons of salt passing through your body. If each one contains microplastics, you are looking at a lifetime accumulation that scientists are only beginning to understand. Early research links microplastic ingestion to inflammation, hormone disruption, and the potential to carry toxic chemicals directly into your tissues. The science is still developing, but the direction it is pointing is not encouraging. Switching to a cleaner salt brand costs you maybe $5 more per month. That is less than a single fast food meal. And unlike avoiding microplastics in tap water or seafood, which requires expensive filtration systems, switching your salt brand takes exactly 1 shopping trip. Walk down the aisle, pick up Jacobson, Redmond, or Maldon instead of what you have always grabbed, and you are done. Your taste buds will not complain, your body will thank you, and your salt shaker will finally stop being a daily delivery system for invisible plastic.